Everyone. My name is Brenda Walper-Bossens. I'm the introducer of the three authors today, and I am also the sponsor of this session. I like to read, so that's why I sponsor. The three authors today are Marjorie Beaucage, SC Lalli or Sonia, and Barbara Langhorst. I am very pleased to be involved with the Festival of Words. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful place for authors to come together and for people who like to read to come together. I am asked to do this introduction. The Saskatchewan Festival of Words would like to start the day by humbly acknowledging that our work is carried out in what is known as Treaty 4 territory. This is the traditional territory of the Nehiyawak, Cree, Anishinabek, Saulteaux, Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Our organization is dedicated to honoring the treaties and is committed to reconciliation. Each year we strive to curate diverse programming and create equitable access. Our work is guided by these principles, and we continue to educate ourselves and each other on diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, decolonization, and anti-racism. Throughout the year, we work with our partners at WACA, which is Waccamaw Aboriginal Community Association, as well as other Indigenous and cultural groups and artists. And it is through these community and artist collaborations that we continue our own learning and unlearning, to question and challenge, and to listen and understand. The Saskatchewan Festival of Words is proud to feature Indigenous voices from Saskatchewan and across Canada. Thank you for choosing to learn and listen. We also prioritize equity and the mental and emotional safety of marginalized groups who are people of color, LGBTQ, and disabled persons, and so on, over the comfort of others. This is a safe place for everyone, and hate speech, insults, or rude remarks will not be tolerated. If you see something that concerns you, please contact one of the moderators or the festival directly. Also, this festival would not be possible without the support of our major funders. So we would like to thank the Saskatchewan Arts Board, SaskCulture, Saskatchewan Lotteries, Canada Council for the Arts, and the Government of Canada, as well as a long list of program funders that will be shown at the end of this event. If you're in a business that you know supports the festival, please be sure to thank them for their support. So, as I said, I love reading, so I will go right into the three authors here. I would like to first introduce Marjorie Beaucage. Oh, before I do that, 12 minutes or so for each of the authors, and then questions at the end. Marjorie Beaucage.
Those lights. Then over here. No. Good morning. So I'm one of those people that fits all those categories she was talking about before. Métis, Two-Spirit, Elder. Anyway, this is my book, Leave Some for the Birds, and it's not a novel. I feel a little strange being with two novelists this morning, because for me, there's like enough drama in life, I don't have to imagine it. But I've had a rich life, and I wrote my life out of 2 boxes of journals that I didn't want anybody else to be going through. And I realized that I had a lot of poetry that I had never shared, and there was a lot of historic events that I was a part of in terms of my work for justice. And I was a social activist. I became a filmmaker. And I use story medicine, I call it, to help people heal and to have our voices out there. And so that's been my work, really. And so what do I choose for today? I'll start with a poem about my grandmother. The old woman with heart wide open welcomes me home. Sit down, rest. Night wrapped its arms around me. I watched her shuffle around the kitchen, looking for the tin of ginger snaps. She sits in her rocker, one leg out, the other under, picking up her crochet, fingers moving over the thread like a spider weaving its web. Grandma's hands. How many babies had she guided into the world? First contact in those hands. How many gardens had she planted and hoed, arms getting browner in the summer sun? Those hands yanking out baby teeth as they loosened, wrapping scarves around resisting necks, kneading dough as if it was a feather, peeling apples in one curled motion into a pie, wedged into perfectly equal triangles, no room to argue over the biggest piece. Those hands gathering eggs from under hens without disturbing them, wielding an axe cleanly for kindling, circling rosary beads in her lap, lips moving silently with the rhythm of the words over and over and over. That pile of mending and darning always there, a torn knee, a hole in a heel, a shirt button gone, all receiving a scolding as her hands repaired like new again. The tightness of a newly sewn button, the comforting fresh darn of a sock. If the damage was too great, scissors would carve out little squares that later reappeared transformed on a quilt. Sitting for hours, poking her needle in and out of the frame, making little rivers of thread through all those patches of colors. She seemed in a trance, her hands circling in and out, over and under, looping the stitches across and back, sometimes humming a strange sound between her teeth. It wasn't a whistle, it wasn't a hum. It seemed to come from far down inside her and then out onto the air. Other times, those hands picked up jars to make teas and poultices, healing potions and ointments, sometimes washing and preparing bodies for burial. Those hands were messengers of life and death, rough and ready to do what needed to be done. Those hands. Now my hands are the most honest way I speak, making love visible when I have no other way to reach my heart. My hands can heal, creating beet chocolate brownies, turning over a blueberry crepe swirled with whipped cream as an offering to feast you, because food is medicine and my hands make good medicine. Thank you. So, a lot of novels are about love, so I thought I'd share a few love poems. Love or hate, I guess, or trouble, conflict. That's the thing about the formula for writing movies, novels, whatever, is like that arc they talk about, in the beginning, middle, and end, and conflict at the top, and then resolved by the end. Those types of formulas never really resonated with me. And so what makes a good story in our world? And it comes from the worldview that we're in, all my relations. And we connect with each other through sharing our stories. And there's no star. There's nobody that's more important than anybody else. It's like that exchange of energy that happens with story. So anyway, here's one. First kiss. A world flew into my mouth with our first kiss, and its wings were dipped in all the flavors of grief. Oh, my darling, tell me what love can mean in such a world. You touched with so much gentleness my dark. You brought me clarity, gift after gift I wear. If I have known beauty, let's say I came to it asking to sit emptily in the sun, receiving fire. That is the way to mend, sitting perfectly still and only remotely human. Did you ever see a close-up of rain falling on the water? Droplets of rain fall, change into spinning tops as they touch the surface, spiral together in a dancing circle, laughing and giggling all the while. Sky is dancing with meteors and flashes of lightning catching the beating of my heart. The wind, the night, the trees caress and comfort me, fire warming, wood smoke rising, loving my woman self, woman to woman, coming to my senses with artichokes and songs, Birkenstocks, plaid shirts and overalls, making visible this new sisterhood. Yeah. Okay, so I realized when we were sharing poetry, love poems one time with another artist that we mostly write about love at the beginning or at the end of a relationship. I guess that's where the novels come in because you see the in-between. But as poets, it kind of comes out in those times when the feelings are most intense. So there is no way to love without being changed. You chose another, space lengthening between us, and I, all tangled impulses and yearnings, the little seed of the pursuit of joy turning to anguish. We did this. We let ourselves downward, hand over hand, as on a rope. We did this, conceived each other in a darkness which I remember as drenched in light. Kind of my kind, earth of my earth, wave of my wave, want of my want, your touch outlining the edge of my dance. Now I look out the window and stare at the blue clothesline lined with raindrops, soft faith gone, up in the air. I'm hoping to land on my feet, living ever separate, ever connected. Our souls have touched, regardless of gender, regardless of form, regardless. So having undone me, will you gather me kindly and show me how the goddess dances, balancing the world as she spins through all the weathers, weaving ribbons for the moon with her tears. Okay. Part of the fun I had putting this book together was that I did a few recipes, recipes for change. But this is one, so I'll share one, activist self-care recipe. Collect ingredients for creating rituals. Candles, medicines, stones. Make an altar space. Prepare food offerings. Gather a community of friends. Nurture and support each other. Share stories of struggles and joys. Remember who we are together in ceremony. Turn the compassion we have for the world towards ourselves. Repeat as needed. And I could do, how much time do I have left? Okay, do a quickie. I don't know, maybe I have time for Holy Freakness or COVID-19. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll do the COVID-19. Back when the internet was created, I remember Buffy St. Marie saying how Microsoft systems were first created as a military machine to kill remotely. And the war continues as more technologies like G5, Huawei, and the talk of surveillance is seen as necessary. I remember as cell phone towers spread across the land, there were reports of bees being so disoriented by the vibrations that they were building their combs outside the hives. The radiation being emitted all over the planet with the G5 technology is making us sick and compromising our immune systems every day. I remember Bill Gates working to promote Big Pharma and HIV cures back in the 90s. Sorry. And 5 years ago, he predicted this pandemic. Why didn't he use his billions to prepare for it? Now he is promoting the vaccine, which will be imposed on everyone so Big Pharma can make more money. It's all about energy. So we need to put different vibrations out with drum and songs and ceremonies like our ancestors did. We need to stay strong, smudge, sing, drum, pray. We are at war, Trudeau says. Stay home, stay safe. There is so much safety that safety is becoming the source of danger. The closed doors of science looking for a vaccine that will keep us safer. Pharmaceuticals and military controlling our movements. The gun gives way to the syringe. Go to hell, Bill Gates. Smudge, sing, pray. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you. Our next presenter is Sonia Lalli, or S.C. Lalli, as she signs her books. Sonia.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for coming, and thanks to the Festival of Words for having me. I grew up in Saskatchewan, so it's really nice to be back and to get to share the stage with so many wonderful writers and creators. So yeah, thank you so much. Usually I do write love stories. As Sonia Lalli, I've written 5 romance and women's fiction novels, but today I'm actually going to share the first chapter of my thriller in which someone gets murdered. It's a very big left turn for me. But as much as I love writing love stories, and I came to writing through wanting to tell the experiences of modern South Asian women like myself, one thing that I didn't like was that often there is the expectation in romance for us to have a likable hero. We want to be able to root with the woman we're going alongside, sharing their journey, falling in love with alongside them. And although that's really great, I really sort of bristled at that because, especially as a South Asian, there's often this expectation on me to be a good Indian girl and to do the right thing and to follow the right path. And I really, really hated that. And I think I had a little bit of bitterness towards it. And I really, really wanted to write an unlikable heroine. Although in the first chapter, you don't get a sense of why she's unlikable. But it was really, really fun to explore that side of myself, to write somebody who was unapologetically ambitious and brave and didn't do things the right way all the time. So yeah, that was the genesis for the main character of Are You Sarah? She's a 28-year-old law student. She works 2 jobs to put herself through law school. She is She's working at a bar one night, and she meets another girl named Sarah Ellis, who is her polar opposite. She's much younger, she's beautiful, she's blonde-haired, she's very privileged, and you think that she has it all, but she's actually very damaged. So I'll just launch into Are You Sarah? I'm also going to self-edit myself a little bit because I didn't realize I swear so much, so my next book, I'm not going to swear so much. Chapter 1. There's a dead girl in the bathroom. I look up. Gavin is staring at me, a tray of empties balanced on his left hand. Dead? I ask. She's a corpse. Who the F was serving her? I shrug. Although the place was packed earlier tonight, only Gavin and I were behind bar. One of us had served her. Deal with her, would you? He says. I was just about to leave. He gestures behind him. Get her out of here, and then you can go. But just effing handle it, Sarah. Gavin takes off before I have a chance to protest. He's chivalrous like that. Annoyed, I make my way through the bar toward the bathrooms. It's just past 2 a.m., and last call was half an hour ago. But there are still a few dozen stragglers finishing their drinks or falling asleep at the tables. I push open to the door to the women's restroom and find 2 denim legs sticking out of the far stall. I sigh. Hey, you. I let the door click shut behind me. The girl doesn't respond, and I take another step forward. I need you to get up. Literally, I need her to get up. I'm 5'3" and sure as hell can't carry her. The girl groans and I soften. I wonder how young she is. Gavin tells us not to check IDs on weekdays. It's the reason he's still afloat. Are you okay? I drop to hands and knees and peer under the stall. The girl is flat on her back, her head resting against the base of the toilet. She's sporting a dark wash jean jacket much like the one I'm wearing, and her long chocolate brown hair is all over her face. I reach my hand out and brush her hair away, and when she still doesn't move, I crawl under the stall. She's petite too, and there's just enough room for us both on the ground. Hey, I say, more gently now. I shake her arm. Let's get you out of here, huh? She lets me peel her off the ground, my arms supporting some of her weight. I flip the lid and manage to get her on the toilet seat. Her Marc Jacobs bag knocks against my hips. Who are you? She asks groggily. I smile, thankful she's waking up. Sarah. Really? My name is Sarah. With an H? No H for me. I pause. Where are your friends? Can I get them? I don't have any friends. So you're here by yourself? Sarah giggles, as if I'm ridiculous. I'm here with you. With my arms wrapped around her waist, I help the other Sarah out through the kitchen exit and back onto a quiet residential street. It's a chilly autumn night, and when she starts to shiver, I button up her jacket. She leans forward and kisses my cheek softly. Do you want to smoke? I've got class in the morning. We've all got class in the morning, she says. Do you want me to call you a ride? A ride is like an Uber or a rideshare. Sarah doesn't answer me as she fetches a joint from her back pocket. I'm tempted to ask her if she's sure that's a good idea in her state, but I'm not her mother, so I stay quiet. Instead, I watch her lean her against the brick wall of the building, one foot tucked up beneath her as she lights up a joint and rests on the bottom lip. She looks impossibly cool. I haven't smoked in ages, and I don't even like pot, but when she gestures for me to take a hit, I do. With minutes, I'm high. Sarah is an open book, and I'm laughing at something I don't remember her saying. A cloud is enveloping me, pleasant and hot, and I'm only vaguely aware when the street's light starts to flicker to Hey Jude by the Beatles, when a black car stops down the road and its light goes off. Then, when Sarah takes my hand, she seems to think we're friends. She is speaking in earnest, and I can hear her, but I'm not listening. My head lolls back, the night air on my face. There are stars winking at me through the trees. Crap, she says suddenly. I've got to go. I realize I'm sitting on the curb, and I stand up to join her. She's fumbling with her phone, ordering a ride. I'm a 25-minute walk from home, but I'm way too out of it to make the trek, and so I do the same. Our phones ping at the same time. Our rides are close. Do you ever wish you could be somebody else? I hear her ask. I look up and find her gazing down the street. Yes, I say, all the time. Who would you be? I don't have an answer for her. Words are hard to come by. They feel lodged deep in my throat. I'd be Lady Macbeth. I'm about to tell her Lady Macbeth is a fictional character when a car inches around the corner and pulls up in front of us. Sarah wraps me in a hug. This must be me. My reflexes are all off, and before I manage to lift my arms up in response, she's gone. I stumble into the next car that shows up, my eyes closing as soon as my butt hits the seat. "Are you Sarah?" a voice asks from the front. "Yes," I say, and a beat later, I'm asleep. The driver wakes me up, grumbling at me to get out. I attempt to sit up straight, but my head spins. The driver yells at me again. I said, "Get out." All right, I fling open the car door. "Thanks a lot, man." It's dark, and I'm cold. I pull my jacket tighter around my body as I try to figure out at which side of Hillmont Road the driver has dropped me. The street is tree-lined, but nothing feels familiar. The trees are taller, leafier, and the house is... I blink at the one right in front of me. It's 3 stories high with a cherry red door and window shutters to match. It's what rich people might call colonial. I swivel around as if my crappy little house might magically appear across the street. My heart sinks. It's another mansion. Damn it. I squat on the curb, more awake now. The cold is clearing my head. I think I got dropped off in the other Sarah's Uber. I open my app. The little blue dot tells me I've been dropped off in a rich suburb on the other side of Windermere. I try to order another ride, but the app locks me out and tells me my credit card has been declined. Just my luck to max out when it's after 3 in the morning and I'm miles away from home. I wind my way through the suburb, the first of autumn's leaves crunching beneath my sneakers, and finally, I find Main Street. At this end of town, the stores are all selling baby onesies made out of organic fibers and kitchen gadgets that zest lemons and other fruits I didn't know could be zested. I rarely come out this way, and I find myself staring through the windows at all the things nobody needs but everybody wants. At a woman's clothing store, there's a cardamom green gown on display. I wonder who in this sleepy university town would need to buy a cardamom green gown. Slowly but surely, the streets change. There still isn't a single car on the road, and now Main Street is lined with a mix of coffee shops, restaurants, used bookstores, gyms, groceries, and other businesses that rely on students. I walk block after block, and finally, I'm getting close. Not much has survived in this part of Windermere. Besides the occasional nail salon at a convenience store, most storefronts are shuttered. When I get to Hillmont, I head east. I'm only 2 blocks away now. I pass a block of rundown apartment complexes, then a daycare, and then I stop. Something feels off. I look up. There's an odd hum coming from up ahead. Lights, too. I cross the final intersection before my house slowly. I'm only 50 feet away now, and the flashing lights come into focus. It's a police cruiser. Hello? The word comes out as a croak, so I clear my throat and keep walking forward. Hello, I try again. My house is tucked beneath a broken streetlight, and it's dark as hell. A shadowy figure emerges from the front walkway as I tense and draw closer. Who are you? Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to stay back. Why? Ma'am, my name is Officer Reynolds, and I'm gonna need you to stay where you are. But that's my house. I live there. The officer comes into full view. He's blocking the walkway with his large frame. You live here? 72 Hillmont Road. Why? Just then, somewhere in the distance, a police siren wails, and then another, and another after that. My heart pounds as I realize they're getting closer. I step off the pavement and push past the officer. Ma'am, no. He grabs my arm, but it's too late. I see her, the familiar denim jacket, the mess of chocolate brown hair dripping down the stoop. I buckle. I feel 2 arms catch me as I slide down to the pavement. Do you know her? Officer Reynolds asks. Yes, I say, right before I black out. The dead girl's name is Sarah. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Our next presenter is Barbara Langhorst. Barbara.
Good morning. It's such a thrill to be here and to in such fine company. Thank you very much, Brenda. Thank you so much to everyone for coming, and thank you to Sonia and Marjorie for sharing the stage. I'm going to read to you from my second novel. I started as a poet, My first book was published in 2012, then Want, my first novel, was published in 2016, and The Winter Blooming Tree was published in 2021. The Winter Blooming Tree is, as Jeanette Lyons has phrased it, an intimate, poignant rendering of a cold season in a marriage of many years. And I should mention that it was a happy marriage. The three narrators, Ursula, Andreas, and their grown daughter, Mia, each have their own worlds based on different understanding of events. I'll start with Ursula, who has been having trouble with her memory. She is waiting with Andreas in the neurologist's office. The doctor was explaining why there had been so many cognitive tests. We have to expect changes, he said. Growing old is a nuisance, but the alternative is so much worse. He paused to smile at his own joke. Ursula was in agony. Get to the point. Andreas was prattling on and on, questioning the significance of this metric and that, the norms and standard deviations. She could hardly bear it. What irrelevant detail were they stuck on now? Her eye fell on the glossy coffee table book that was spread just so beside the carafe, the pages branching with 5 thin limbs of gorgeous apples, each one different, an array of yellows and greens and reds, each one shapely and perfect. There had been a time when she had known every variety by sight. Honeycrisp, Goodland, Norland, Parkland? What was the other one? Norlands don't keep as long, she thought. And then, as the men labored on, probing the statistics, their voices receded to a distant hum, and she was away. Ursula hadn't thought about that tree in ages, not since the second summer they lived in Humboldt, almost 35 years ago now. Ursula had fallen in love with a pretty little 5-grafted apple tree at the grocery store, of all places, on the very last day of their parking lot sale. The tree had stood tall and thin, nearly 2-dimensional. It hardly seemed much to ask her fit young man, dig one more hole and help her plant it. But Andreas had been so charming, so adept in the logic of his procrastination, and she had not been so surprised after all. He hadn't refused outright to help her. A good husband would never do that. But that while the tree waited on the deck, its long branches flicking against the wooden lattice, at last she thought she understood. Andreas would never make room for this in his fine calligraphy of nursery specimens for what was, after all, just one of his peculiar little wife's peculiar little whims. But because she loved him so, Ursula pushed that thought away, and soon they lapsed into routine. Not the routine of home, of Switzerland, no, never that again, but the new routine, the one they built to fit these days, to enfold their hours up there in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, Canada. Each afternoon they had labored together in the garden, digging and planting, so in love, so wordlessly in sync, until at last, exhausted and weary, they headed back in to fetch their evening meal. Even their diet was different here. When in Rome, Andreas had joked, and all that free-roaming Saskatchewan beef was really good. They were reborn as carnivores, grilling thick steaks topped with tangy gourmet barbecue sauce. And when it was time to eat, they sat side by side in their new slatted teak chairs, sipping Zinfandel and talking the day through, all while the pale yellow light flooded the northwest and the blue sky above gave way to indigo, punctuated with bright stars and fluorescent pink contrails. When at last the darkness was all around, they fed tall bonfires and delved deep into the stories of their lives. And at midnight they retreated into the comfort of the house, climbed the stairs, showered together, made love, slept peacefully. By 9 a.m., the new orchard was calling to them through open windows, the day simmering with birdsong and lush with the vibrato of insects. Each morning, after coffee and croissant, they prepped lessons, tidied rooms, shared a quick lunch, then fled with the joy of truants into the garden once more. It was all so new that first July and August in Humboldt. By the time the long summer slipped into fall, the apple tree was just one more deck ornament, even to Ursula. And in October, when the first snowstorm hit, helping Andreas haul the heavy pot downstairs seemed no less natural than stowing away the patio umbrella or folding the lawn chairs. How easy it was to ignore. And yet one day, When she had gone down to throw in a load of light wash, at last Ursula saw it, the graceful, espaliered limbs alight in a single struggling beam of sun. The room was thick with scent and pale petals and even a few apple green leaves. And miracle of miracles, some of the leaves had set and small green fruit had formed. When she called Andreas, he had been astonished as she, and for weeks they spoke of it. Had they reinvented Eden, if time could exist before consequences? But thirst and gravity must have their way. Ursula had consoled herself as she gathered the first handful of their never-to-be apples from the concrete floor. When the real orchard, the one in the backyard, budded out in all the ecstasy of May, she knew that the universe had tried to teach her anything. It was that hard work brought prosperity. So when at last Andreas had hauled the little tree upstairs, the slim branches lathered with petals and chartreuse leaves and elongated filaments troping towards the light, she was determined. It would not be too late. He would plant the thing tomorrow. But when he repositioned the base in its familiar water stain on the deck, she felt an emotion she could not name. And then the fresh wind stirred, and oh, how the dry blossoms blew. The faded petals were streaming again before her when suddenly her eyes refocused. There was the coffee table, the large book, the photos of stunning clarity, the slender branches heavy with rounded red and yellowy green apples. The doctor was speaking. With academics, the decline can be as sudden as falling off a cliff. In most cases, however, the minor confusion of MCI, mild cognitive impairment, appears first. Andreas replied, and when family members noticed this confusion? Ursula swallowed hard. She couldn't breathe. The doctor continued, patients score 24 or less on the MMSE, but even before they reach full-blown disease, MRI scans can help to confirm the diagnosis and rule out brain tumors. Confirm the diagnosis? Confirm what diagnosis? Did she have MCI or dementia? Ursula blinked. She wanted to weep. She wanted to scream. She could hardly ask them to go back and explain or let on that she had entirely forgotten to pay attention to what they were saying. Why on earth had she let herself daydream right then when it mattered? Why couldn't she have listened just this once? The doctor swung his feet to the ground and rose smoothly from his recliner. He looked into her eyes for a moment longer than she expected, then glanced at Andreas, who had risen beside her. The most important thing now is to get some rest. The MRI will confirm my diagnosis. I'm 98, he paused, 95% certain, and there's nothing like worry to impair memory and increase deficits. Now might be a good time to retire. Even a leave would help. But keep busy. Find a hobby that uses your mind. And now we'll turn to Andreas's point of view. There are 3 different points of view in this novel, Ursula's, Andreas, and their daughters Mia. Today we're just hearing from Ursula and Andreas. Like Ursula, Andreas begins by reminiscing, but soon moves into his own interpretation of what the doctor has said. Ursula always said that first summer in Humboldt had floated by like a paper napkin in a breeze. The townsfolk had nice country manners. No one could deny that. On Saturday mornings, as he and Ursula sat leafing through the newspaper, the phone would ring and an invitation for coffee the next day. The ladies served Saskatoon pies and apple cakes and strong black coffee with thick farm cream to new friends and old neighbors alike. And once she had settled into the routine, Ursula was happy teaching chemistry at the high school. He didn't know how she could just walk away from something she loved as much as botany, but he couldn't fault her instincts. Her teaching schedule did give her summers and Christmases and Easters with little Mia, who arrived the year after they had settled in. And even now, despite her moods, still he longed for that old connection. It had been uncanny. Her mind seemed to follow his to their youth, and she looked up into his eyes and said, "This reminds me of the year we met." He was about to wrap his arms around her shoulders in a hug when she said, "Remember how I always got lost in university in Basel, even when I was 20 and perfectly fit?" "You're perfectly fit now," he wanted to shout. Instead, he just said mildly, "We hadn't met when you were 20, sweetheart, remember?" He clenched his jaw. His head throbbed. As they walked off the pedway, he guided her to the right, fighting off the frustration that washed over him. He forced himself to look around, to smile pleasantly at the truly sick and suffering, the pale, disheveled patients walking by with IVs or rolling past in wheelchairs or sitting slumped in motorized scooters. These people had problems, real problems. He forced himself to keep smiling, but he felt his face go taut, thicken into a mask. He felt alone, helpless alone with this malingerer, this self-obsessed hypochondriac. She wasn't ill. The doctor had guaranteed it. She was fine. Was she never going to admit to feeling relieved? She spoke again, more loudly. "You know I can't navigate inside. I need—" He wanted to scream, but he gave no sign. There was nothing left to say. He wasn't going to feed her neuroses, not this time. That might infuriate her, he knew, but he wasn't going to let her convince herself that she was frail or delicate or in need of cosseting. The doctor had said it all. She was stressed out, maybe even a little crazy, but physically she was fine. All she needed was the blessed MRI to prove it. Even in her high-heeled boots, Ursula was still a good 35 centimeters shorter than he was, and she was flushed now, winded. Dr. Paul had said that humor was the best tool they had. They only confirmed that he had learned years ago and early in their marriage. All they needed was a sense of humor and relaxation and sleep. And fine food and regular sex, of course. Good health stemmed from nothing more complicated than that. And, as Dr. Paul had pointed out, she needed a psychiatrist, someone to taper her off those ancient meds, the ones their family doc had prescribed to elevate her mood and help her sleep. Surely they were affecting her memory. Still holding her hand, he lengthened his stride, just thinking of it. I'll leave the narrative now, but thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Now, the rest of this session is for questions. Could we have the lights? Yes. And could we have the three of you answer questions from the audience? And I'll do my best to moderate. Yes, please have a chair. So, questions? I don't know that there is a mic for the audience, but I'll try and repeat the question. Oh, come on, come on. These ladies, yes.
Oh, thank you.
One word choice really jumped out at me. How the leaves crunch beneath your sneakers. I always found the word sneakers to be a very important term. Most Canadians say runners. Was that very purposeful?
Okay,
You
so
know-
if I could, the question is why the use of sneakers versus the use of what Canadians might call runners?
It wasn't purposeful at all. I think my language is a bit mixed up. My husband's Australian, so sometimes I say things that my family doesn't know. They're like, "What's a loo?" or something like that. So it wasn't a conscious choice. I didn't even realize I said sneakers. I think I would have said something else, like runners. So yeah, it was not conscious.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Very, very different writing. What feeds each of you as a writer? What nourishes you as a writer?
Okay, so that's a question for all three of you, and we'll just, the question was what nourishes you, what feeds you as a writer, and we'll start with you, Marjorie.
Oh, well, it's kind of funny because I never really thought of myself as a writer. I kept journals. They were my survival. I didn't have any place to put a lot of the things that I felt when I was a young, raging activist. So it was, I didn't have my own voice yet, and so the journals were a safe place. And then I have written other things and a lot of essays, reflections. I was, reviews, articles in the arts and in social justice in Indigenous papers, but I never thought of myself as a writer. I use story as medicine, like I said before, story as a way of connecting people. So, yeah. And then yesterday when I was listening to these other people up here on the stage talking about all these different kinds of writings and everything, and I said, I'm definitely not a writer. Or not that kind anyway. And it's like this book, it's not just one thing. So it took me 7 years to find a home for it, like a publisher that would accept me as I am and not try to put me in a box, like poetry, memoirs, Indigenous, lesbian, whatever. So it's all of me, right? And I don't like these labels or being separated. And so when I go to a bookstore, I see it, one day it's in the poetry section, in another bookstore it's in the political section, and in another bookstore it's in the religious section because I talk about spirituality, and in another, put it on all of them, I don't care, it's like,
Thank you.
yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but here we go.
Barbara? What feeds you or what nourishes you as a writer?
Saskatchewan fed and nourished me. When I came to Saskatchewan, I was a reader, a person who had always read, and I'd studied poetry for 20 years, but I'd never had the courage to write it. I took a workshop at St. Peter's where I was working with Laurie Nelson Glenn because they needed an extra bum in the seat, and it was for fearful and lapsed poets. And I joined a group of us who were some of them in the crowd here, formed a writing group, and we wrote for about 8 months after that, and that was the basis for my first manuscript, which was experimental poetry. And then I decided I wanted to try a novel, so I wrote a novel that was based on my desire for a new kitchen. I desperately wanted a new kitchen. And so I wrote about a woman who had accidentally ordered one online. And then had to try and trick her husband into believing that it was what he had approved. So I wrote that, and then I was worried about my memory, so I had a friend who had some experiences happen to her that happened in the winter blooming tree, such as having her library rearranged, but anyway, by her husband. So I wrote that book, but the trouble is Michael and I did move to Edmonton, and we do have a tiny, perfect little kitchen now, so I'm hoping I won't develop dementia. But I should say that all my books end happily because I think you can get enough unhappy endings in real life. You should be entitled to a happy ending in a novel. But anyway. So Saskatchewan has fed me, and I found my people here. Our daughter, years ago before we moved, said, go find your people, when she was about 19, and the way 19-year-olds can be. And we did come to Saskatchewan, and we did find our people, so it's been lovely. But now I have to find my people in Edmonton, which has not been as easy. So it's lovely to be back here.
Thank you. Thank you. Sonia?
I think it's my family that fuels me. Both sets of my grandparents were two of the first South Asian families who came to Saskatoon in the early 1960s. A lot has changed then. But our family has been so disconnected from our roots, especially me, because I was born here and I don't speak any of either of my parents' languages. So I think I grew up hearing stories about what it was like in India. They're very amazing, very, very harrowing tales of survival and getting to come to Canada at that time and what it was like. And So I always grew up hearing these really, really amazing stories, and one day I would like to tell, I think I need a little bit more wisdom before I can tell the stories about my grandparents, but it really, I think, inspired me to write what I was seeing, and I think like so much has been changing, and I love seeing how much representation there is now, and it's even getting better, and I just really love being able to be part of that discourse.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, but our time is up. I'm sorry if we can't, maybe you can catch the writers later. Thank you very much. This was just awe-inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I love hearing this.